Hello and welcome to Light Forging and You. This is part of an ongoing series of deep dives into various aspects of the board game Kingdom Death Monster. My name is Fen, and today we are looking at the story event that links to the Slender Man. So, apart from being an internet creepypasta, the Slender Man is also still, in my opinion, the best of the additional Nemesis monsters that you can buy. I think only the Butcher overall comes close to being anywhere near as good as the Slender Man. And the Slender Man is also unusual in that this is a Nemesis monster with direct crafting linked to it. Now, all of this is unlocked the first time you defeat a Slender Man, which is a video we'll look at in the future, fighting against the Slender Man. But for now, once you defeat it, you will gain some of this resource, the Dark Water, and you'll unlock this Dark Water Research. So this is the heart of everything you're doing, and it has two functions, well, three, including this passive. So Departing Survivors gain +2 Insanity. That's a nice additional passive. It means a fresh survivor who you're taking out on their first ever hunt goes up to 2 Insanity, giving them some protection against brain damage, against trauma, brain trauma, without immediately putting them to be an insane right from the start. So quite helpful. And overall insanity is very good, although the Slender Man does attempt to leverage insanity against survivors, so there's a mild negative interaction in that way, but to be expected. We'll talk about light forging last. So the other thing is this, which is you spend an endeavour, 2 resources and 2 dark water to increase the level of your dark water research by 1 to a maximum of 3. Your dark water research starts at 1, so you'll only ever need to activate this a maximum of twice. Depending on your plan, you might even only ever activate this once. But this is the main thing to remember, because light forging in dark water research is a multi-level crafting table where you need to have enough research level to get to the higher and theoretically more powerful stuff. So always bear that in mind when we move from first level to second level, from second level to third level. There's an additional flat cost you need to pay before getting to that. So we're going to look at all of these lovely pieces of gear and how you craft them, everything in a moment. But first of all, I just want to highlight these resources along the top. These are used in crafting some of the gear. You'll see there's the lion tail, the shank bone, and the phoenix eye. I expect this to maybe change or have some alternate options in Campaigns of Death, but for now, this means the Slender Man is quite closely tied to the 3 core monsters, which is something we've seen future stuff move away from. Skulls are also a very important thing. First piece of recommendation, if you're playing with the Slender Man, hold on to your skulls. You're going to want 3 of them. Then we have iron and the Crystal Sword Mold. Crystal Sword Mold is another Slender Man specific resource. This is gained via a piece of gear and it's used in constructing another piece of gear. We'll talk about that as we get to them. So before we get right into said pieces of gear, let's just take a quick look at light forging itself. Wow, this is... there we are. It was not happy. So you can see here is the level 1 research, which is Gloom Bracelets, Gloom Coated Arrows, Gloom Mehndi, and a Dark Water Vial. Level 2 has the Raptor Worm Collar, Gloom Cream, and Gloom Hammer. And level 3 has a Slender Ovule, Gloom Katana, and the Gloom Sheath. So your typical light forging, this is the sweet spot here at level 2. This is where the best stuff is. Level 3 does have some merit to it, absolutely. And the Slender Ovule is really, really good. But it's not as important to get to 3 as it is to get to 2. And we'll discuss why as we look at the gear in a moment. Okay, so let's close that and let us take a look at all of this lovely, lovely gear. So, one of the things to always bear in mind when looking at this is have a plan for your dark water. You're only going to get dark water by fighting the Slender Man, and outside of using the Heart Flute, you're only going to face the Slender Man 3 times. So it is a finite resource. You don't just want to be spending it without thought, which is where knowing what the gear is, thinking in advance, and just sort of navigating your way through everything can matter a great deal. I'm going to give you my usual plotting path near the end of this video, but for now let's take a look. So we have Gloom Bracelets. So these are an item, jewelry, gloomy, fragile and heavy. They are an accessory that sits on the arm slot location, and they add 6 armor points to the arm location. When you depart, you gain +2 insanity, and when you suffer a severe arm injury, you have to archive this card. It has no affinity requirements of its own, but it does have a left, right and down facing, left and right red and down facing blue affinity. So Gloom Bracelets are, well, I really like the crafting for this. They require a bone, a lion tail, a scrap and a dark water. And you can physically see what's happened to the lion tail. It's been used to make the wrap around and combined with the scrap and bone and treated with the dark water to create these weird other kind of things. Now, the big issue with Gloom Bracelets is that dark water cost. They are a temporary piece of gear. You have to work quite hard or be very fortunate for these to not break at some point. So you don't just make Gloom Bracelets without having a plan for them. Now that plan could be going in to fight the final nemesis monster. I've got a spare slot, I want these affinities. If it breaks during the fight, it doesn't matter because it's the last fight of the campaign. Perfectly valid. Or it could just be, I want to use them, I think they're cool, and I have a two-handed weapon, so I don't really want to lose one of my arms for my spear survivor. That's another piece of like protection, and you could look upon them as being a bit like a dried acanthus, specifically for that kind of survivor. But the other two main uses that I often employ them with is with silk armor and with a strain fighting art. Okay, first of all, silk armor has the set bonus of whenever you're attacked, after all hit locations are rolled, you may change one hit location dice to the result of your choice. So this lets you employ these 6 extra armor points on your arm as effectively as possible, because you can move damage from other locations that would cause a severe injury to the arm location, where you've got an extra 6 points to soak up more damage. And then when the Gloom Bracelets, I swear there's so many tongue twisters in this set. The Gloom starts to lose all meaning. When the Gloom Bracelets are close to breaking because you have not enough armor points left, you can start moving the hits away from the arms to other locations. That means on top of maybe having access to block and to dodge or deflect, other ways of cancelling, ignoring, avoiding hits, etc., you can keep the bracelets alive for a lot longer and leverage that extra 6 points. I mean, 6 points from one piece of gear is quite a lot, as long as you have a bit of control over whether the monster's going to hit it or not. Now, the other really cool and useful thing is, as I said, a strain fighting art. This is in Echoes of Death 3. It's called Armoured Fist, and once you've unlocked it, you get to add your strength equal to the armor value of all your hit location for fist and tooth attacks. So you attack fist and tooth, and suddenly your armor points on your arms start to matter. And this is an extra +6 strength there, which is super cool, very thematic, and it's like, you know, like somebody fighting with extra weight behind their punches because of these bracelets. So that's the main spots where I will tend to want to make use of these. So this is kind of a fairly situational piece of gear, but it is good when you are making use of it. Next up, Gloom Coated Arrow. So this costs 2 bone and a dark water. It's an item, ammunition, arrow and gloomy. It has the ammo bow ability, cumbersome and deadly. So that means deadly increases range chance of scoring crits. Cumbersome means you have to spend your move and your activation to get this to work, like a firing a bow normally. Ammo bow means you can't use it without a bow, very standard. It has 5 speed, 6 plus accuracy and 5 strength. And it has a very unique ability, which is after attempting to wound each hit location, place it on top of the deck instead of the discard pile. This ability works once per showdown. So use the arrow once per showdown, I should say. This is one of the good arrows. It's not the best arrow. It's probably the 3rd or 4th best arrow. But it's fantastic for that whole setup thing. It gives you a ton of information about what you're attacking into, and the only time this is really an issue is if you're unfortunate enough to hit the trap. All you can do with that is pop the arrow when the hit location deck is full or reasonably full to get the right odds. As well, you can get double activations from this if you combine it with the Sunstalker Quiver, which we'll talk about in the Sunstalker video. On the whole, adding deadly onto this makes it to be a fairly good arrow. The 5 strength will fall off eventually, so it may not carry you throughout the entire campaign once you've crafted it, but for 2 bone and 1 dark water, if you're playing with archers, I think you should be crafting 1 copy of this if you can budget for it. So this is a reasonably high priority craft, maybe not top priority, but still very, very good. Now we have the Gloom Mehndi. This is item gloomy soluble. Is notably missing the symbol keyword, which I hope is addressed when this is updated in Campaigns of Death, because without the symbol keyword it doesn't combine with the Necromancer Secret Fighting Art, which is meant to work around Mehendis. We'll talk about that in the Lion God in the future, but it's just something to note. It costs 3 organs and a dark water. It has a left facing blue, down facing red and right facing red, so decent affinities. I like this orientation setup of them. It's fairly good, and the down facing red is often very useful. But the big thing on this is it has the abilities that when you depart you gain 1 armor point to all hit locations, and it's an item, remember, it's not a shield, it's not armor, it's an item. And when you gain the crystal skin ability, which is gained via mineral gathering in the crystal lake after overwhelming darkness, you will gain the crystal sword mold strange resource, which is right up here. And that is used later on. It's worth noting that you don't archive this Gloom Mehndi, so you can get more crystal sword molds in the future, and the crystal sword mold is a scrap/iron resource. So this not only gives you access to the mold, which is used for crafting the level 3 katana, it also just gives you iron/scrap via a passive generation. And crystal skin's amazing. So I really like the Gloom Mehndi. It's fairly high on my craft priority list to get 1 of, but big part of that is because getting crystal skin on at least one of my survivors is generally a goal through most of my campaigns. You can't always achieve it because it is in the hands of chance, but I try and tip the odds as far in my favour as possible, and I like getting a little bonus extra iron while doing that. Our final level 1 item is the Dark Water Vial. So this costs an organ and a dark water, making it the cheapest of the level 1 crafting gear, so to speak. It is an item, consumable, gloomy and fragile. So gloomy and fragile, there's usual warnings about that. Consumable stuff can be a benefit, can be consumed by some events, very rarely. Fragile means it can be broken under certain circumstances. Most particularly notable now is fragile gear is terrible versus monsters that use vibration damage, so be aware of that. Its once per showdown ability is you activate it, you are knocked down and you cannot gain bleeding tokens until the end of the round. It also has a downward facing green affinity. So the affinity is nice because any once per showdown ability really needs some affinities or some other passive bonus to make it worth justifying. But the truth is, the activated ability here, this is ridiculously situational. There are some small areas where knocking yourself down and avoiding gaining bleeding tokens can be a lifesaver or can help set up some kind of interesting moves. But ultimately, I don't see the point in crafting the Dark Water Vial outside of the most edgiest of edge cases, and I don't recommend bothering with this thing. You'd be better off saving that Dark Water because it is a limited resource, and you should spend it elsewhere. So, next up we've got our level 2s. As a reminder, you have to spend an Endeavour, 2 resources and 2 Dark Water resources to unlock level 2. You just do that once and then it's unlocked for the future. And we have 3 pieces of gear. The Raptor Worm Collar, the Gloom Cream and the Gloom Hammer. Now this tier, as I mentioned before, is where Lightforging really sings. All 3 of these items are great. One of them might be like best in class for its particular category as well, but all of them are unique and do special things. But we're going to start with the least impressive of them, with the Raptor Worm Collar. Now this costs 1 organ, 1 scrap and 1 dark water, and it has raptor worms embedded in this little metal collar. The flavor text that comes on the thing, each of these, when you craft, this flavor text. You can't quite read it, it's blurred there, but it says wearing this makes your throat itch but allows you to speak with disturbing clarity. Raptor worms are kind of interesting, fascinating little animals. It's also kind of gross to think what this collar is doing from a thematic standpoint. From a mechanical standpoint, it's an item, jewelry, gloomy, with a left facing red, a down facing green, decent affinities, nothing to write home about, but definitely happy to have them. And it allows you to encourage without spending survival. When you encourage a survivor, they suffer 2 brain damage. So encouraging without survival is great. That means this has all of those encourage synergies that can be beneficial. The price you pay is this 2 brain damage. So for some survivors, suffering brain damage can be an issue because they're using a sentient weapon or they are an immortal survivor, etc., etc. But against monsters that are seeking to pile insanity on you and then punish you for that, like the Screaming Antelope, like the Slender Men, this is almost invaluable. And given that the level 3 Slender Man has a auto death mechanic linked around having your insanity too high, I genuinely think you should craft at least 1 Raptor Worm Collar whenever you're playing with the Slender Man. Maybe even more if you can afford it. It's just a really good, useful utility thing. It's also worth noting, in situations where you can't spend survival, you still have access to encourage because you're not spending survival to do this. So it is a flexible and useful piece of gear. It's just not going to like wow you incredibly because encouragement it's just one of those things you do. It's pretty like, it doesn't feel super exciting, but it is good. So that's the Raptor Worm Collar, and I do recommend crafting 1 of these. Okay, next up we have the Gloom Cream. So this is crafted from a love juice, expensive, a hide and 2 dark water. The flavour text is another one I love. Treats wrinkles but kills brain cells. So this is a item, consumable, balm, gloomy, stinky, other. It has a left and right facing red and up and down facing blue, and it has an affinity bonus that if you connect the left and the right reds, and you get 2 blue affinities in your gear grid as well, which can be using the up and down blues possibly to help. You have the ability that when you depart you gain -3 hunt XP and -1 understanding, and if at any time you have no understanding you die instantly. So Gloom Cream is a way of extending your hunting survivors' lifespans. I think crafting 1 of these is probably the second most important thing that I would do. So we're about to get to the most important thing, and those people who know can see it right there. It's the Gloom Hammer. We'll talk about that. But this here is nice to have a copy of, because those situations where you're running out of hunt XP to complete your weapon proficiency, you can take advantage of the Gloom Cream to get your survivor move backwards. -3 hunt XP is like a whole hunt against a level 3, or 1.5 hunts versus a level 2, or 3 level 1 hunts. It's a big deal. It is really significant and super helpful. It is awkward. You'll have to build around it. You'll kind of create a sort of... They're going in the Gloom Cream outfit in order to get it working, but it's absolutely worth it. And there is nothing else quite like this. The main risk is you want to make sure you've got plenty of understanding. Also, ideally, you'll have already completed the understanding track when you use this. And you need to watch out for stuff that might completely remove all your understanding, because that's an auto death, but that's very, very rare, and I think it's a risk that's worth it if you are not going to complete your weapon proficiency otherwise. So, superb, absolutely superb. Just remember to pay attention to whether you will be eligible for any new milestones or not when you reduce your hunt XP. Look at the relevant sections. Age milestones tend to be like once per lifetime, so just be aware you can't beat the game by doing that kind of thing. This is more prolonging the amount of time you'd be out hunting when you haven't managed to get ageless. So thumbs up, 2 of them. Right, onto the centerpiece of the entire affair. This is the Gloom Hammer. This costs 3 skulls, an iron, an organ, and 3 dark water. That's why I talked about holding on to skulls near the beginning of this video. The Gloom Hammer is a weapon melee club, 2-handed, gloomy, and other, with a left-facing red and an up-facing blue affinity, and the unique sentient, reach 2, and deadly keywords. Sentient means you have to have at least 3 insanity or qualify as being insane in order to activate this weapon. Reach 2 is amazing. I've talked about reach plenty in the past. Don't need to talk about it more here. Deadly, also amazing. Yep, just fantastic. And it has the attack profile of 2 speed, 7+ accuracy, and 13 strength. On top of being a club, clubs like to have big strength. Club make numbers big. On top of all of that, when you wound, you end your attack, which cancels any reactions. So you never have to worry about monster reactions here as long as you're securing the wounds. And then you gain the monster controller tile and you full move the monster directly away from you. Now, to talk about this in a little bit more detail, we are going to now navigate away from here, and we're going to take the Gloom Hammer with us, and we're going to look at a couple of lovely, like 2 gear grids. They're very sparse, but they'll explain everything to talk about the amazing synergies that are involved with this. Even if you, even without talking about what we're going to talk about above, this is really good. And I'll explain why in a moment. Okay, so here we are on our gear grids. Very sparse. I'm not going to fill these out properly because I just wanted to exemplify some of the most prominent synergies. So the Gloom Hammer is one of a small category of gear pieces that plays around with the monster controller token. So this is used whenever you're playing with 2 or more players, and it's handed around between the players, and if you target a survivor they gain +1 insanity. Pretty standard stuff. This, changing hands at the start of the round is the key important thing to note about this. So when you attack with the Gloom Hammer, you gain control of this monster controller tile. Didn't mean to zoom in, but we did. You gain control of this. Now, when the monster's turn starts, it's going to pass on at the start of the round, and it'll follow the usual direction of passing, so it'll go to the person on your left. So the most basic trick is you have your Gloom Hammer survivor sitting to the right of your tank survivor. Now that means that your tank is always taking the hits, they're always gaining the extra insanity, and you are ensuring, well, not always, but they get to ensure that they get more of the hits. And that's really powerful. But when we start including spidicules into this entire picture, things get even more impressive. So first of all, Just a quick note of silk boots. I wanted to mention these. They are unusual in that they let you spend 1 survival to gain 2 insanity, which can help you keep you topped up on sentient from the Gloom Hammer. You can also use the screaming horns from the screaming antelope to help ensure that you can keep attacking with the Gloom Hammer, even through intimidate actions, etc. And that doesn't have to be on this gear grid, it can be on a different survivor, but it does work on this gear grid if you want to play a mixed set. So that's the main goal here, is the Gloom Hammer survivor is going to hit the monster, trigger the Gloom Hammer ability, and then they're going to get the monster control token, and then at the start of the next round it's going to pass forward to whoever's looking to do the tanking job. Now, where things get super interesting is when we include these rings into the picture. I put all 3 on. The red ring isn't quite so impressive. If you have like ways of bleeding yourself during your turn, you can use this twice per round to generate 2 automatic wounds. That's not to be sniffed at, okay? So, and the red ring is pretty busted under the right circumstances, and this is a less broken way of using it. However, I wanted to mention it here for the sake of completeness. Story of the Young Hero is one of the most common ways of like bleeding yourself out while it's your turn. So you could use it that way. Gloom Hammer hits, red ring survivor then knocks themselves down and bleeds and deals 2 damage every single turn. But the other 2 rings are way more impressive when you're thinking about a tanking facility. So we're going to begin with the blue ring. And you see, if you are the monster controller, when the monster draws AI, you draw 1 extra card, select 1 to play and discard the other. So you get to manipulate and prune your way through the monster's AI every single turn. This is a free rawhide headband ish. Like, it is discarding the other one, so it's going into the discard pile and will turn up in the second lap of the AI deck. But that's like not bad if you're just gonna, for the whole showdown, have the blue ring active and always get to pick which one of these 2 cards is the least dangerous for us. I'll pick that one. And it's always worth remembering, the monster has full moved away from the Gloom Hammer survivor, so it's kind of often on the edge of running at someone and then being able to dash cancel anyhow. So if both of them are bad, you could just be, alright, well, it's going to target me, I'll gain my insanity, and then I'll dash away during the flow step. The really big thing here, though, is denying legendary cards. When you fight the high level monsters, one of the biggest things to do is to stop them performing their legendary cards, because that's the stuff that really brutalizes the survivors. Instead, you can be like, nope, not that one. We'll just have an advanced or a basic attack instead, and we'll trigger the legendary if you want to a bit further down the line. Super, super useful. And, it just, more information helps you beat a monster, because it can't adapt and change its plans. It doesn't have that capability. It's pre-programmed, and you get to mess with its pre-programming and also get information about what that said pre-programming is. Fantastic. The other ring, green ring, this is more of a brute force. Basically, the first time you're attacked each round, you gain 3 armor points to all hit locations if you are the monster controller. That's 15 extra armor points the first time you're attacked each round. Most monsters can't overcome that kind of regeneration. 3 points, 5 hit locations, boom. So either they can kill you through bleeding, through intimidate, or through an auto death, but they are exceedingly unlikely to be able to take you out from attacking. And so you will generate usually a net positive of armor points every single round, because you'll be gaining 15 and the monster won't be dealing that much. Because you've also still got to account for blocks and dodges and deflects and any other ways of preventing damage. So this is the big famous combo. But I will just say the Gloom Hammer by itself, even without this level of abuse, is really good for just giving you consistency in having a tanking survivor continuously gain the insanity that will help them get through intimidate actions, which is, it's just great. It's just really good. Everything the Gloom Hammer does is amazing. So that's the end of level 2. We'll go back to the deck now and look at the level 3 items. Okay, so here they are. The Slender Ovule, the Gloom Katana and Gloom Sheath. I'm going to talk about the Katana and Sheath first, and then we're going to end with the Slender Ovule. So these two need to be considered together. The Gloom Katana costs an iron, a crystal sword mould, as talked about before. You'll gain that from the Mehndi crystal skin interaction, and 2 dark water. It is a weapon melee katana, two-handed finesse, gloomy other, with an up-facing blue affinity that is moderately relevant, and an arrow that points to the right. It has 4 speed, 5+ accuracy, and 0 strength. But it has 2 abilities. The first is your insanity is added to this weapon's strength, and the second is when the Gloom Sheath is to the right of this in your gear grid, hence the little arrow, the Gloom Katana gains Savage. Savage is a nice bonus. It's not something I either super try and build around, but it's good to have. So let's just really quickly look at the Gloom Sheath, and then we'll discuss them as a pair, because I genuinely think all katanas and sheaths should be discussed as a pair. The Gloom Sheath costs 1 Shankbone, 2 Organ and 2 Dark Water. It has an up-facing red, and block 1. It's an item, gloomy and other. If you connect the up red and you get a blue anywhere else in your gear grid, complete blue, then at the start of your act gain 1 insanity. So you can see how this is designed to help increase your insanity for use with the Gloom Katana. And the honest truth is, this is kind of a meme pairing. This is for people who really want to slash around with the katana. The Gloom Katana is either kind of an unimpressive weapon for the cost you pay, because katana isn't a great weapon type, because the weapon mastery is we'll look at it in the Sunstalker expansion, but it's whatever. It's not great, it's not terrible, it's definitely not even in the top half of weapon masteries. But that strength situation based on insanity, essentially either you are going to be abusing insanity gains, because there's a number of ways to get stupid amounts of insanity, and once you're at past 25 insanity, you're generally wounding most monsters on a 2+. So that there's that, and I mean we have ways of gaining 1,000 insanity. We have ways of at the moment gaining unlimited insanity thanks to Hiccup from the Gorm, Hiccup AI card. Something I think will be fixed in Campaigns of Death though, but it is a abuse loop that's available right now. Or it's just going to do nothing because your insanity gets reset to 0, or you can't even use it because you're fighting a monster that will punish you for having too much insanity. So I think the Gloom Katana and Gloom Sheath is not even the best katana. That's obviously the Rainbow Katana with the Blood Sheath, which is higher strength on average, if you're average typical survivor, because it gets 4 strength plus sharp, if I remember correctly. I think it has deadly as well. So I don't think this is a particularly good weapon, especially given that you need to pay 4 dark water and pay another 2 resources and 2 dark water to unlock this, the level 3 crafting in the first place. So in my opinion, I wouldn't really worry about these, but you can do fun stuff with them if you have a player at your table who is in love with this. If they see this and that makes their eyes light up, and that's all they want to do is run around as a crazy person slashing monsters with a katana, they could make worse decisions. So on that front, I really quite I appreciate what it's doing. But it's a bit of a meme, and it's also telling that you can do this, the same insanity tricks with the X-Max. The X-Max is a promotional piece of gear from the Holiday Twilight Night, if I remember correctly. That is easier to craft, and it's a better weapon type because it's an X. So that's another alternative. However, we do have a piece of gear that is super interesting and a good argument for going up to level 3 research, and that is the Slender Ovule. So the Slender Ovule costs a Phoenix Eye and 4 dark water, an absolutely eye-watering amount. It is an item, jewellery, gloomy other, with an up and down facing blue and a right facing green. It is unique, so you may only craft one of these. When you depart, you gain +3 insanity, and if you connect one of the blues and the green as puzzle affinities, then you get a really unique ability, which is monsters and survivors adjacent to you have -1 luck. So -1 luck on a survivor means they are less likely to critically wound. -1 luck on a monster means everybody who attacks it is more likely to wound. Effectively, it reads, if you're adjacent to the monster, then every other survivor gets +1 luck as long as they don't stand next to you when attacking. This is kind of amazing, and it is really easy to get around the drawback of not being able to stand next to the Slender Ovule wearing survivor, because you can choose to move before attacking, or you can have the Slender Ovule survivor move away before they attack themselves. So this is an incredible tool to help leverage high luck even further. And the only kind of monsters it's bad against are those who either punish critical wounds or have very few critical wound locations of their own. So this is the argument for going to level 3, and it is a doozy of an argument, even though you're looking at 8 dark water to get all the way up to making this. And I would still say you should make the Gloom Hammer first. But if you have a run on dark water, if you have a lot of it extra, you really cannot go wrong with the Slender Ovule. It is fantastic. Even though it includes one of my least favourite monsters, the Phoenix, I'll still go and craft this. And that is it. So we're going to take a real quick summary now of everything. So let's just focus in on light forging here. Whoop. Oh. It's these Slender Man effects making it hard to zoom in. So you'll unlock this when defeating the Slender Man for the first time. You'll be able to craft these from the beginning, and it will require an upgrade of 2 resources in Endeavour and 2 Dark Water to get to each of the 2 higher levels. My goal when fighting the first Slender Man is to try and get to 5 Dark Water. If I can do that, I'll immediately upgrade the Dark Water research, and if I have the skulls, I'll craft the Gloom Hammer. Otherwise, I'll save the remaining Dark Water until I get enough skulls to make the Gloom Hammer. So that's my first goal, make a Gloom Hammer, always. Gloom Hammer, amazing, it'll get sharp via Lantern Armor a bit further down the line if you need it. It does so much. It's one of the best weapons in the game, full stop, and it is the gear card to craft in the Slender Man. Beyond that then, the other kind of things I'm looking for is I want a Raptor Worm Collar, I want a Gloom Cream, I want a Gloom Mehndi, and then Gloom Bracelets and Gloom Coated Arrows I will consider if I'm playing with survivors who can leverage the benefits of these, a bow user, somebody who wants high armor. And then at the top end, if I have a run on Dark Water and I've gotten everything else I need, I'm going to go for the Slender Ovule if I can afford it, and I have the Phoenix available. I feel when we get to Campaigns of Death, we're going to have to revisit Slender Man gear for sure, because I can see the crafting recipes on the ones that use core monster specific resources being updated. Although I do love the thematic concept of wrapping the lion tails around your arms as these bracelets. Super cool, like really fun. And yeah, that is your boy the Slender Man, who, while being a internet meme, is without a doubt the most in-depth, interesting and sophisticated Nemesis monster in the first generation, and still the best Nemesis monster for Node 2 by a long mile. I would pick this over the Kingsman and over Atlas anytime. And the only caution I would warn you is the first time you play People of the Stars, maybe don't put the Slender Man in, because the Slender Man's mechanics will make it a little bit harder for you to unlock constellations on your first attempt. Otherwise, Slender Man's kind of a permanent fixture in my campaigns, unless there's a specific reason I've excluded it. And light forging is interesting, is synergistic, and it is always a lot of fun to smack things with a Gloom Hammer. So that's it. That is light forging. My name is Fen, and when you're out in the darkness, happy hunting.